Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this narration of the web series Beyond the Void, taken from Reddit. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Larkan point of view. Nico looked like a lost tourist, slinking around behind the temple, but as with all humans, appearance could be deceiving. If you wanted an item stolen, this was the guy you asked. There was no job too dangerous for the right price. Call it arrogance or well-placed confidence. But the man believed that he could crack any system. Sometimes he would snatch an item on a whim, just for the thrill. Fencing contraband, primarily human weaponry, provided him with ample revenue and considerable influence. As for the authorities, Nico lined the right pockets that allowed him to dodge port inspections, move cargo freely about the outer rim systems, and stay one step ahead of the investigators. I'd served the human for years, acting as his right-hand man. Sometimes that was as pilot, as messenger, as a bodyguard. Whatever was asked of me, I obliged. Today, my role was to be his lookout, the eyes and ears for his latest operation. But the current target, a temple of the Covian species, did not sit well with my conscience. It represented the predominant faith of my homeworld, and while I was hardly devout, I still clung to the core of our beliefs. Toying with the religious institution seemed to be tempting fate. It was the kind of irreverent action that merited divine punishment. It was no wonder that Nico was the only thief willing to accept this contract. "Boss," I hissed, "are you sure that this is a good idea?" "What, got cold feet?" Nico snickered, waving a hand dismissively. "This is a simple break-in. It'll do fine." "Simple, sure, but you're stealing from a temple," I replied. "What if you anger the gods? Men have been cursed for less." The human sighed, rolling his eyes. "I don't believe in sky daddies. Fairy tales for children, Larkin. Look, all you have to do is sit there for a few minutes and watch for trouble. Can you do that?" A growl hummed in my throat. His condescending tone rubbed me the wrong way. "Fine, but you're making a terrible mistake." Nico had scoped out the scene during the day and used his findings to draw up a plan. The doors were wired with an alarm system that would alert police if not disarmed in 10 seconds. The priests of the Covian pantheon figured that would be enough time to deter any intruders from snatching their relics, but clearly they had never met a human. My thieving friend's plan was to scale several stories up to the glass rooftop, bust a hole in it, and then rappel down into the gallery. Once he had the package, he intended to stroll out the front door and be long gone before the authorities showed up. I was nauseated just watching him shimmy up the rusting pipe on the roof. There was nothing stopping him from falling to the ground and becoming a splat on the stone pavement. If his grip faltered for a moment, all the support gave out under his weight. Before long, Nico reached the top and shot me a thumbs up, grinning like the perilous climb was nothing. He hooked the other end of the harness's rope around the crumbling spire, which rested at the center of the glass dome. I was not convinced that the structure would support his weight, but I doubted he gave his safety a second thought. Nico drew his pistol and fired several shots through the fragile ceiling. As the glass shattered beneath his feet, he began his descent. The spire was all that kept him tethered overhead, and it was cracking like a tree that was about to topple. It began to tilt in Nico's direction, and I feared that it might snap at any second. To make matters worse, the exterior lights of the building flashed on, and the shriek of an alarm permeated the air. So much for a wired door being the only defense mechanism. There must have been some sort of motion sensors inside, activated by his entry. Police drones would be dispatched now, and hovercraft officers would follow shortly on their heels. We needed to flee immediately, before it was too late. The spire had not given out, and I suppose that by this point, Nico had touched down safely. Surely, it would abandon the mission, and we would make a break for it. His species was insane, but I was pretty sure that he had no desire to go to prison. But the seconds stretched into minutes, and there was no sign of Nico. The curly-haired human must have been in no rush to evacuate, and the buzz of drones was growing louder. Perhaps something had gone wrong. It seemed I had no choice but to leave him, if I wanted to save my skin. My eyes darted around, searching for the best escape route. At that time, the thief burst out through the front door, clutching a miniature statue to his chest. The ceramic figurine looked unimpressive, but an anonymous buyer had offered a sum upward of 500,000 credits for its retrieval. I ran up to him, jabbing a claw in his face. "Are you crazy? You should have left the damn thing. We're busted." "And leave empty-handed," the human quipped. "Follow me. I know a shortcut back to the canals." "It's too late. See those drones?" I pointed to a pair of discs about 100 paces to our left. "They spot us already, and they have thermal cameras. You won't lose them. I told you this mission was cursed." "Do you trust me, Larkin?" He frowned as I fervently shook my head. "Whatever. Run like your life depends on it." Nico tore off down the alleyway, and I changed after him, my spindly legs struggling to keep up with the persistent predator. My lungs were burning after only a few strides. The drone zipped after us, closing the distance. We passed over heaps of garbage and empty shipping crates that had been left out on the street. The pungent scent of rot was enough to choke my senses. The human was fortunate enough to have a weak sense of smell. A chain-like fence blocked the end of the alleyway, cutting off our escape. It was only nearly twice the human's height, but he didn't skip a beat. He mounted it in a single leap and vaulted over to the other side with ease. It was only then that he glanced back, checking on my progress. I reached the base of the barricade, doubled over from exhaustion. My species had evolved with an aptitude for burrowing into the ground, not climbing. There was no way that I was going to make it over that fence. Nico climbed back up, reaching a hand over the top. "Take my hand. I'll pull you over." "Go!" I panted. I'm done." The human muttered several curses in his native tongue, then, despite my protest, hoisted me over the fence. I collapsed on the ground, pressing my paw to my side. Instead of abandoning me, like any sane species would do, Nico drew his pistol and fired on the drones. The kinetic rounds bounced harmlessly off their metal armor. It only seemed to anger them. Now they had been attacked. Their programming gave them clearance to engage with lethal force. Nico drove behind a dumpster, and not a moment later, a laser scorched the ground where he had been standing. By the gods, he was going to get himself killed. A police hovercraft glided into the alley, parking itself between us and the exit. The only option now was to surrender, and to hope that the officer would spare us. A young Jatari male stepped out of the cruiser, wielding a universal remote in his hand. Inexplicably, he pressed a button and powered down the drones. Why would the officer disable the best weapons against an armed, hostile human? Nico might have a chance in a shootout with a single patrolman. "What have you done this time? Get in the vehicle before I change my mind," the Jatari muttered. To my surprise, Nico lowered his weapon. "Ben, long time no see." The human boarded the hovercraft, and I hastily crawled after him. He seemed to know the Sven guy, so perhaps the cop was on his payroll. Wherever we traveled, corruption was never difficult to uncover. It was an attribute that thrived in positions of power. Officer Fenn settled behind the controls, but seemed to be in no hurry to take off. His body language suggested that he was waiting for something, as did the expectant look he threw at Nico. "Of course." My Terran friend fished out his holopad, tapping a few buttons. "There you go, 50,000 credits wired to your account." The officer feigned disbelief. 50,000, that's it. Don't be ridiculous. A 10% cut for a 2-minute ride is more than fair. I want 100. No way, Fenn. Don't get greedy now. Well, if it's too much, I suppose I could just take you to the clink. Fine. I'll give you 50 now and 50 when you drop us off. No. Full payment now, or we just sit here and wait for my buddies to show up. Your choice, Nico. Bastard. There, I sent another 50. Let's go. Drop us off by the bar. Officer Fenn chuckled. Then the hovercraft revved to life. As we floated off the ground, I couldn't shake the feeling that we'd gotten away too easily. My intuition told me that fate had a terrible punishment in store for us. Something much worse than prison. End of story. The algorithm reckons you should be watching this video next, and I recommend that you should be always watching my video. So, click with energy! And yes, clicking that does help the channel. Thank you very much. I just quickly want to thank the Tier 5 patrons and channel members: Alithia Barkey, Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Albarden Guster, Arcadian, Lord Azrakal, and Joachim Backer.